Well, we want to start by welcoming you to the 2019 Charleston Conference. And as a digital librarian yourself, I know you've been here before, but I hope you'll keep coming back.
Yes. I love this.
You have such an energy. It's wonderful to see that. Today you made that really significant announcement, and it wasn't just honestly about the Better World Library, but it really went beyond that in so many areas. And the conference has taped that, and that will be available and linked as well so that people can get at that. But I want to kind of go a little bit deeper than that, and want to talk to you a little bit about the fact that certainly one of the strongest connections you have is that the Internet Archive is very much a community-based organization, and so is Better World Books, Better World Library. And I want to go back to a comment that you made at the DWeb Summit last year, 2018. And DWeb standing for Decentralized Web. And you said this, which I thought was very encouraging for everybody, but certainly it had to have been for the attendees. Let's build a game with many winners, not just one monopolist, where there is no centralized control. The World Wide Web was that way. It was welcoming. It was open. It was infuriating. Lots of people could play. Let's build a decentralized web. Let's lock the web open for good. Let's back in our values. Let's make freedom of the press irrevocable. Let's build a system we can depend on, a system that doesn't feel creepy. I loved all of that. That was a wonder. I don't know if you had planned that or if it just came out, but I want to relate it to something else that as I was reading through what happened at DWeb, it brought me back to something Buddha said. Thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle won't be shortened. His ending was that happiness never decreases by being shared. And it seems to me that part of your mantra, and certainly for Internet Archive, is that truth never decreases by being shared. Would you want to comment on what you are doing with the Better World and the direction that the Internet Archive is going itself?
I'm booky. I mean, I grew up, I've got a printing press in my basement. My wife's a print historian. I mean, it's like books. I love books, and as much as I read so much more on screens, and I guess people are now listening, so much more now. I feel like we're missing something. Mm-hmm. I think we're missing out on some of the power and the wonderfulness that has been put into books over the years. The careful thoughts of books. So we thought, can we weave books into the web itself? Mm-hmm. So the web is a different kind of world. People just sort of move around quickly, and they're jotting in and out. And books really often aren't really that way. You kind of pick up a book, you read it, and I still read in books. But I want the power of books to be combined with the power of the web. How do we do that? How do we do that technically? How do we do that respectfully of copyright? How do we do that within communities? Mm-hmm. And so I think we've cracked some of that nut. I think we have. And one of the keys is Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. Wikipedia is the place people start. And it shouldn't be the place that people end. Mm-hmm. To the extent that it is where people end, we're shortchanging the readers. It should be a launching off place into the controversies, into the interesting aspects, the quirky things. Because Wikipedia is trying to be a step back, a consensus. But I think kind of like a deluxe card catalog. It's really, really rich card catalog that allows us to get an idea of what's going on and then find out where we want to go from there. If we can go and take the power of books and weave it with Wikipedia, leveraging the expertise of librarians and the library system, the publishers and the authors, I think we'll do so much better than, I don't know, the blogomatic world or the Facebook whatever, or news that comes with a picture, a headline, and that's about it. We need to do better than this. So a little bit of it's optimism towards we can do it, and a little kind of worried about where we're going if we don't.
So the decentralized web, if you would comment on that a little bit, it seems to me that's one of the things you're really pushing for.
Yes.
But other people are too. So that community, can you describe that?
Yes. So you know, if you think of the Internet Archive, it's probably the most centralizing thing out there. I mean, I spent my career going and trying to make it so that there's lots of different publishers out there. Everybody could be a publisher with Waze and Gopher and Web and all these things. And then the Internet Archive centralized it back again. And so I say, why decentralized web? Is the idea of the decentralized web is to go and make it so that every website lives everywhere and nowhere. Can you make it so? So it works a little bit like publishing in our libraries. So if you were an academic publisher, you'd go and have a journal, and it would appear in lots of different libraries. So if any one burned down or whatever, it's still available. That's not the way the web works now. There's one journal publisher that has that article, and that's the wrong thing. We want those articles, we want those ideas in many places. And those can then be preserved separately, but they can also be leveraged differently. I'd say it's some of the power of the open source software movement applied to information. So the web may seem decentralized and that there's lots of different websites, but any particular website lives in a place. It's controlled by one organization. How do we have multiple editions? Right? If you just take the old book world or journal publishing world, how do you have some of the power that we built up over hundreds of years that we kind of lost in the translation with the World Wide Web? The fortunate thing is the web is still pliable. You can actually change it. And we just have to do it soon. Certainly the calcification and the monopolization and the slowing down, the sort of feeling like it's just constricted, is certainly setting in, and people are reacting negatively. So how can we go and take some of not the negative energy so much as the possibilities that our technology allows us to build something better than being locked into a Facebook world, or the only place you can buy something is Amazon. Those aren't games with many winners. I like to have games with many winners.
Very true.
So one of the trends I think we might be seeing with information is that it is appearing more and more without context. We're seeing sound bites and snippets and things without kind of the full picture included. In thinking about the work you're doing with Wikipedia and incorporating these links to texts in the Internet Archive, it seems this is a really powerful step towards recontextualizing information.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on kind of like the importance of context and how that drives your thinking or any other projects you're developing or actively engaged in now.
I don't know about you, but often there are these posts that are circulated with some YouTube snippet of somebody saying something outrageous. And it's infuriating, and it makes me want to go forward it on to other people. Right? and this happens, and then all they get is that thing. Well, what happened before and after?
Yeah.
And we're not just talking the comment thread on the on it, but maybe that was part of a press conference. What is it? What are we talking about here? How can you click and go and see more and deeper on subjects? And the good news is people actually want it. So there's a little bit of the, no, people just want to live in their bubbles, and they're just, if I hear again, it's like, except for you and me, you have to understand they're all really stupid. That's in fact not true. The people are really, they may not be interested in the same things as we are, they may not have the same point of view, but they're not stupid. And so we can go and provide richer and deeper context if we make it easier and put it within their world. Right now means phones, which is, what a world, that is a chill. I mean, there's a reason why newspapers were this big, right? To be able to understand what's going on in the world. If you have this much to do, or now it's just coming through in a podcast, I mean, the number of words you get in a half an hour of talk radio is really small. So I think we've got extra work to do. And the idea of going back to just having a few authoritative voices that's going to tell us how it is ain't happening. So I think it requires us to be able to have people jump off easily and go and say, really? And how do we turn that really into more information on it from the best sources before they're on to the next thing? How do we take really to authoritative, vetted information? And everything in books are true.
Right.
We know that,
Right.
but at least it's been thought about and pushed forward a bit, and then you can go and say, really? About the book? And find out about that author. And really? And we can keep going on like that. If we can get people curious about what they're looking at and reading, but then fulfill it.
Right.
And the great thing about libraries is that's our business, right? Our business is to make it so that people have access to this information and in context. And we get paid big bucks. It's a $12 billion a year industry just in the United States, 21 billion around the world. And we get to give away the information for free because we paid for it from publishers and authors, so we support the publishers and authors, awesome. But from an end user perspective, it should be really quick and easy and cheap. And if it's not, people will learn from something else. And not on my watch. Right? I'm not going to see the library system or books go down on my watch.
I like that. That's, yes, very compelling. Do you have any kind of advice for librarians to help further stimulate this kind of curiosity and that thirst for context? Because I feel there is this trend towards the good enough. And what can we do? Not necessarily, you don't want to shame a user or make them
Right.
feel like they're not doing well, but you want to nurture a different kind of perspective or interest in other perspectives.
Right.
I mean, clearly there's no easy answer, but do you have any guidance or advice for us?
Oh, the hero librarians out there. I think we've got to bolden up. I think we have to take our original job descriptions of preservation and access and remember it. And our field is often one of the most unempowered feeling people it's amazing to me. It's a highly educated population, very service oriented, and somehow we've let the air out of the tires of an awful lot of people. And so what would it mean to have air in our tires? Where would we go if we felt like we could get done what we wanted to do? Let's take some examples. I think we need to bring our information out in different ways. Let's, for instance, weave it into Wikipedia. You know, Wikipedia is a little controversial out there, but it is the number 5 most popular website in the world, right? It is huge, and it's ours. It really is ours. Yes, it's got some weird communities. Let's be the community. Let's be the weird communities. Let's go and make it what we think it should be. So weaving information into Wikipedia and improving it. Great, that's awesome. Why don't we go and take the things that are cited by Wikipedia and put those online? And what we announced today was a program for doing this at scale. So if libraries were to deaccession their books to Better World Books, if we don't have at the Internet Archive one of those books, they'll give it to us, which we then preserve the physical material and we digitize it and make it available online for one reader at a time, right? So that's kind of lame, but at least it's there and it's referenceable. If we could start to assume books are referenceable and not just little Google snippets. They got stopped by the courts because they're kind of profit motive and other things. So let's do this within the library context. So libraries could deaccession their books to Better World Books. We all deaccession. We may not be proud of it, but let's do a good job of it. And why don't we go and make sure the best that we know is out there? So I sometimes just go buy books so that they can be digitized and put them on the Internet Archive and weave them into Wikipedia. So that's another thing. The little talking widgets, the Alexa widgets and the Google Homes, a little creepy. They're really popular. So how do we make our information and our factoids available through those? Don't know, but it's really being dominated by the few big, Pandoras or the like. That's not good enough. Where are we? So how do we adapt to some of the new tech that's coming out? Gosh, I don't know. I love the one-on-one person thing of librarians. But I think we're going and shrouding ourselves in these large organizations too much, large buildings. So what if we were to have reading rooms that would be in like a mall slot. It would come with a librarian and a couple comfy chairs and a terminal, and we could turn on, because it's a library, maybe we could turn on books so they'd be much more available. So if you when I was growing up, if you slogged your bones into a library, the promise was that you could get access to anything. And if it wasn't there, they'd get it for you, right? That was the pitch. That doesn't exist anywhere on the internet, right?
That's true.
If it's there in an instant. If it's not there, sorry, right? You know, whatever. No, right? It's a paywall, you know, and what? So this doesn't work, right? So we've lost the promise. We've lost actually the benefit. So I think we could do this with little mall slots, right?
Bring back the bookmobiles.
Yeah, if a bank is to an ATM machine, a library is to what? Right?
Good point.
Can we do that? I think we could. I think it would be fun.
Yeah.
Maybe it's kind of bookmobile, but I think we can just go and sprinter this stuff around. Be more relevant to more people. And actually, I think it's the librarians that really hear how we should go upstream and find out how we should be better, because they're the point of contact.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Online reference desks. You know, we've been trying those things over time. They kind of work and kind of don't. So how do we do more of that? How do we scale that? Automate it? It's an exciting time. This is sort of our day, really, right?
Yeah.
We were always sort of kind of off to the side. You know, nice to have a library, glad to have a library. But but now we're so relevant. People are looking for information all the time. So let's spring into the opportunity.
Well, and plus there's so much more information these days that leaving people alone on their own with the internet is very difficult, because you don't know the quality of what you're getting either without some sort of.
And we've gone from spam to misinformation and disinformation, where it's okay to lie. I mean,
Yes.
what? Really? Really, it's okay to lie? And so let's expose it. Let's shame it. Let's go and make it so that we make as much information available so people can actually find out real things. As otherwise, people will just learn from whatever it is they hear over and over and over again. And we have a media that's just, they're also suffering. We've been getting much more popular at the Internet Archive with the Wayback Machine by reaching out to the journalists. And so they're using us a lot.
That's great.
And they're giving us feedback and saying, your Wayback Machine's not good enough. It's not searchable. It's not easy to find. It's like, okay, let's fix that. And so we would like to be more relevant to more communities. And it may not be our existing traditional communities. It may be politicians. It may be the staffers. It may be journalists. It may be other authors. How are we to serve now? I think we can think broadly. Based on our technologies, a lot of things are less expensive than they used to be. Digitizing a book and making it available online is about a $20 a book thing. That's all told. So about a cost of buying a new book, you can take an old book, digitize it, and make it one copy available online. Cool. That's not bad. The Internet Archive is about an $18 million a year organization. That's kind of what we are. I think Wikipedia is like 100 million. The San Francisco Public Library is 160 million.
Wow.
Right? And so and I'm not saying they're overpaid, right? That's great. It's just there's a lot of leverage with these new technologies if we play our cards right. So I think we have to find ways that keeps people in their seats. Right? So the Internet Archive, I don't want it to be huge, right? I don't want it to be the library that rules them all. I want it to be a part of the library system. So we work with the academic libraries, we work with the public libraries, and we make the best parts of those enduringly available, and then they can go and weave that information back into their own services. Because there's some things that we know how to do just by being tech geeks that really is just not in most iSchool's curriculum. So can we go and leverage each other? And by being nonprofits, I find it a lot easier to work together. So one of the things we announced today is Better World Books is now owned by a nonprofit. So effectively is nonprofit in the sense that all of the benefit that goes to Better World Books is nonprofit. And it just makes people easier to work with. You know, we don't sign non-disclosures with nonprofits. It doesn't work that way. It's a way of how can we work together? You know, how do you just say yes more often?
It's sort of like those 1,000 points of light as well, that the ideas can crop up organically rather
Yes.
than waiting for somebody to come down. That's one thing I keep hearing about Internet Archive from talking to different people who have worked with you or worked for you, is that the structure of the organization is rather amazingly egalitarian compared to some of the tech companies that have existed. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how Internet Archive actually works.
Oh, I don't know if it's egalitarian, maybe disorganized. I would say that it's really it's a compendium of people's passions. You would only go and work within an Internet Archive if you wanted to get something done. If you just needed just another job, you'd probably get paid more or have an easier life someplace else. So it's a set of people that want to get something big done, or they want something on their own particular area. So Jason Scott he runs archive team, awesome guy, and I said, how about software, right? What do we do about software? And he said, okay, let's he was doing all sorts of other things as well, but then he started working with these outside communities, all volunteers. He doesn't have any staff, yet he's now archived hundreds of thousands of pieces of software. It's not him.
Wow.
It's communities and working together and finding what does communities need. And we've now made it so you can play old Apple II and IBM PC
Very
software
nice. Very
by
nice.
going to a web page and clicking and booting an IBM PC and playing your old favorite game. And it all works, and publishers are happy with it, and everybody's happy with it, and it's all around working. And I think it's because he had an idea of how to do something. I thought he was crazy. He did it anyway. And he worked with a large number of other people and brought it to bear. So we're funded by libraries paying us to digitize books or to collect web pages for them, which we're very thankful. And about half of our income comes from fundraising. It's at the end of the year. It's kind of the Wikipedia or the NPR model. And we also get grants. We got some support from the crypto guys last year, which was really tremendous, which was interesting because we've been a big supporter of the crypto world, because it's when the internet comes into a new field, whether it's finance or books or music, the existing players are often really uncomfortable because they kind of like the way it used to be.
Sure.
So we try to encourage and show path forward. And so I think as a way of saying thank you, the crypto guys gave us a bunch of money. So I think that's really encouraging. As we're getting used more, people contribute, but we want to stay small. And the only way to do that and continue to have impact is to have good working relationships. We have about 600 organizations collecting the web through us, about 500 libraries that have funded us to go and digitize books for them. That's a lot of libraries. A lot of national libraries. So we just try to say yes.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's very empowering too. Like I found it very striking, this narrative about Better World Books saying just buy us. And you're like, well, I don't want you to be us. Like in other parts of the industry that might not have been the case.
Right.
And respect for the autonomy and the independence of other partners is not necessarily a priority. But it seems like a lot of the work and the way you describe it is all very much about preserving.
It's preserving community and
Yeah.
lots of different people that feel empowered. We just wanted Better World Books to be more Better World Books,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Be Better World Books and don't get smudged. And it's challenging right now being a bookseller.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's competing against Amazon and next day delivery. And it's like, ouch. So I think I'm hoping that with Better World Books, that there are a lot of people that would like to buy from a effectively nonprofit bookseller that know that their money is going towards, something I didn't know, I don't think it's a trade secret, is 38 cents out of every dollar that that you buy a book on Amazon goes to Amazon. It doesn't go to the bookseller or the publisher or the author. It goes to Amazon. So if you go directly to websites like betterworldbooks.com or University of, Princeton University Press or whatever it is. A lot more money goes straight to the publishers, authors, booksellers, and the like. I'm not against Amazon. I use them all the time. I get the little smiley boxes on my doorstep all the time. But I think in the case of books, I think we can go and support a wider ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it really behooves us. One is the wrong number. You're using Buddhism. They say one. It's like, how about many? How about many? Especially when it comes to books and ideas. How do you let outsiders not have to go through a gauntlet of status quo to be able to be seen, read, heard, known?
Well, one kind of follow-up, kind of relating to that, is all of what we used to call the third world, we now call them information deserts. We even have them in the United States. Certainly tribal nations don't have access in the same way. The schools and so on just are not what they might be. That's one thing about the internet base for a lot of this.
Yes.
The internet is really sort of leveling the field, or has the potential.
Has the potential. Let's do that. Okay, here would be an experiment that I'd love to be involved in.
Okay.
So, the Soros Foundation, I think it was the big funder of it, but I think there was this idea on pharmaceuticals that it was too expensive for people to get it in rural Africa, and they weren't making a lot of money. Pfizer, and so they basically did a cut rate program and made sure that the medicines were everywhere. So what if we take a community, say tribal American Indians? They're very dispersed over their territories, as I understand it. What if we made it a copyright-free zone?
Wow.
Just an experiment. Okay, so off-res, you pay. On-res, you have everything, right?
Wow.
So that you could just go and say, all right, on-res, you can go and read any book, see any movie, for free. Like, would that damage Netflix? Would Amazon go under? Would when Random House suddenly have all of its VPs go and jump off a cliff? No. But we'd have an experiment. It would be very easy to understand. They're kind of sovereign, kinda. So could we do an experiment like that? I think we need a little more slack in the system. I think the level of trust is diminished out there. Level of ability to experiment, we sort of send in the lawyers first. And I don't think that's going to do well for particularly books. If the way books are going, we're losing. Book publishers are losing. They're consolidating into fewer and fewer. They think that Amazon's going to save them. It's like, no. That movie does not end well. And so if we want to keep a diverse set of voices, if we want a diverse set of authors with many publishers, many booksellers, everybody a reader, we're going to have to do some radical experiments because the consolidation that's going on right now, we know which way this is going. It's going the way of species, it's going the way of languages getting smunched, it's going the way of ideas becoming more and more limited. We have, okay, you're a red or you're a blue. It's like, that does not paint a portrait of the complexity and the interesting thingness of humans. So we need a wider, more interesting ecosystem. I would love to go and experiment in some new and different types of places. Or, okay, here's another one. The Christian Science Church. We bought a Christian Science Church. That's where our headquarters is. We bought it because it matched our logo. It has pillars and so forth. And it's a great church. And since I went to school in Boston with the mother church there, I knew all about it. And what they had are reading rooms. They have 4,000 reading rooms all across the United States. What if we made those libraries? What if we made it so that you walk into one of those reading rooms, just get Mary Baker Eddy's and good literature like that. Sure, it'll have that perspective, well represented, fine. But what if everything else were there? Wouldn't that be great?
Yes.
It's like, why don't we try something? And if it really, really works, do some more of it. And if there's money to be made, then we figure it out. But right now, I think we're building more and more information deserts. The New York Times had a piece this last week about information becoming more visual, that people aren't reading.
Right.
So I asked some of my friends that are in college now, when was the last time they read a book? Like, picked up a book, started at the beginning, went through and finished the book.
Yeah.
Right? And it could be audiobook, it could be Kindle book, it could be a physical book. When was the last time? And I'm coming from Ivy Leagues. They're saying, I can't remember. Maybe Harry Potter or these, and it's, so I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. It's like, maybe not. Maybe they're actually onto something. They're going in and out of things much more rapidly. So a lot of their class guides are a chapter from here or there. They're not the full book. They will be if they're literature classes. But sometimes they don't even read the whole book in literature. Sometimes it's just, they're really learning in a very different way, and we better adapt. And don't just go and argue, well, you should come back to the library. Because the libraries are full of people, but it's not got a chunk hold of guiding how the future is going to go. We have to adapt.
Yeah, it's true. We have to make it clear that we are paying attention and not just fighting against the tide.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of tides and futures, it seems like a lot of the projects that you're involved with digitizing print materials makes really good use of the first sale doctrine. Maybe I am being overly paranoid, but I see more and more born digital content with licenses that supersede things like first sale. And I talk often with my colleagues about, will we even have first sale doctrines to enable us to do this kind of work in the next couple of decades? Is it going to be phased out? Is it endangered in some way? I hope I am just being a negative futurist in that particular moment, but it's something that causes me a bit of anxiety.
I'm not a legal expert, but I would say this is ours to lose.
Okay.
I haven't seen laws done very well that are proactive. Whenever there's been sort of proactive laws, they usually get it really wrong. And they get it wrong because the legislators are listening to the people around them. And frankly, that's not librarians. It's a pile of very expensive people that are telling them what they should pass. That laws are best done retroactively to go and fix things that are broken.
Yeah.
So I think so that's not an obvious thing to think through. But I don't see any law out there going and saying, we don't want libraries anymore.
Right.
I mean, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see like, oh, Congress passes a law, libraries, nah, no. But we are affected negatively by, I'd say, collateral damage from big industries sort of wrestling it out. So, what does this mean? It means do the right thing. Be a librarian. And so be a librarian. What is that? It's preservation and access. We buy things and we lend them and we preserve them forever. That's what we do. And if somebody says, well, you're not allowed to do that, it's like, I'm not allowed to be a librarian? And
it's like the Twilight Zone episode, you are obsolete.
I haven't heard that yet. So I think that this one's ours to lose. So I've been involved in a bunch of the wars of this technology stuff. I was not one of the leaders of the ARPANET going into the internet, but I was very much part of it. But I was not one of the leaders. I was during the sort of World Wide Web versus AOL, when that whole thing was coming about. And I wanted an open world built. The status quo guys wanted that dead. They didn't want anything related. We sort of look back and talk, it was easy. It was like, There were a lot of problems and issues that were wrestled out, but we just made it go. Search engines, right? Search engines. If you were to propose a search engine now, and just think of your committee of lawyers that were in your institutions. It's like, what we want to do is copy everybody else's stuff and make it searchable, and go and be able to give snippets back. They would say, no way.
Right.
But can you imagine a world without it? You know how it happened? They didn't ask. And I know this. They didn't ask.
Very good.
They just went and built it. We built the Internet Archive in 1996 and started archiving the World Wide Web. Why did we do that early? It's to make it so that it's part of how the web worked. We didn't ask permission. We did a bend, not break. So if people got upset, we have to purge the complainers policy and wipe people out of history. But if they really want to be disappeared, and it's like, okay. And so we've basically have found a way through it. With television, we started archiving all of television in year 2000, and we made television news available, 30-second snippets. You can search and find based on what people said. If you want the whole thing, we stamp it onto a DVD. I guess it's a thumb drive now. And lend it to you, and we send it to you and send it back. That sounds clunky, doesn't it? It's like, it is clunky. It's library-like, right? Why did we do that? Why did we put that friction in? Is to go and make it so that it wouldn't be a replacement for going to CNN.com. Because that wasn't our point. We're a research thing. And it's up and running, and it's going just fine. And it's 10 years later, and it's all working fine. With this books and controlled digital lending, same thing. So, Michelle Wu is going to be, I think, interviewed as part of your program. She's here. She's a fabulous law librarian. You can talk to her about sort of how the whole controlled digital lending works from within the law structure. But frankly, from a librarian's perspective, it's what we do, right? It's how we work. And if somebody goes and says we don't want libraries anymore, they'll have to go and argue that pretty darn hard, because I don't think that's what people are expecting. But I don't think we should expect legislators to go out of their way and preemptively go and make it so that something that the librarians think should happen is written into a law, and then we'll start doing it. We'll have to prove that it's useful, and pretty much, like, search engines didn't ever have to be ruled in legislature. It just is. Controlled digital lending, people say, oh, it's going to be fought out. It's like, I hope not. Controlled digital lending is actually not all that great. I mean, it's a little clunky and hard and weird. I hope we go quite a bit further in making it more frictionless for people to get access to these materials. So I don't think it's not harming people particularly. So I think we just have to do our jobs. And we have a fantastic job. We get paid to give things away, right? We get paid to be Santa Claus. So let's do our jobs. And the real kick in the butt for me was the last presidential election. The last presidential election was a train wreck. It went really wrong. Just how the whole information ecosystem worked. Journalism worked, the internet worked, Facebook, Twitter. It was just travesty after travesty after travesty of just people acting badly, not responding well, foreign countries getting involved. Just holy crow. So as an engineer librarian, I say, well, it's a problem. Let's fix it. What can we do? What's our part of the ecosystem to go and make it so that this doesn't happen again? Otherwise, things can go very wrong. And I think we're seeing it go wrong. So I believe that we're getting a lot more latitude to do our jobs, to inform people with the best information we can, in a non-biased, right, not politically aligned, and not only just for a United States population. If this is happening in American elections, we know it's happening everywhere else too. So what can we, in the privileged organizations, in Yale, in the United States library system, what can we do to help people in Chile, in Brazil, in Africa, in other places? What can we use our resources, technological, information resources, to go and make these available so that within their own context, they can go and make these things available. It may not be in the same way that we use things here. I completely understand that, but we are trendsetters. So what can we do to balance some of the terrible problems we're seeing because these technologies are ripping through societies and ripping up communities. Can we go and respond by taking the wonderful materials in our collections, making them more available, building technologies like the decentralized web that have a less single focus way of viewing things, that we make it so that publishers aren't just on one website, their wares are not on just one website, that they're recontextualized and preserved from multiple angles. That's what we're here for. That's why we're paid the big bucks.
I wanted to talk a little bit about something related to what you're doing, and that's the Marion Crocker donation. And I know that there was issues in terms of just being able to accept it and etc. it, and it's huge. I
Yes.
think it's an estimated 70,000
Yep.
VHS tapes. If you maybe if you could kind of talk about how you came about that, and
We're getting better at physical collecting.
well, you've
And-
done
and-
pretty good, okay.
Yeah,
But-
well, what we wanted to do, universal access to all knowledge. We thought the only way to do that is digitally. All right, one copy of every book ever published, all books, music, video, all blah, blah, blah. And we found that we hoped that libraries would just take back the physical materials and preserve them. But they're not interested in them in many cases because they're full. And there's just an awful lot of it. So we started getting better at getting physical donations. So we collect and keep all of the books we've digitized if the libraries don't want them back. So we have millions of books now. And we're starting to get millions more. And with this Better World Books, we're going to get millions and millions more. And so we're building really off-site repository structures that are much less expensive than the Harvard model because we don't have the access version is digital. So this is really a preservation function which allows you to be much more dense. That's good. We're also now starting to get donations of 78 RPM records. Boston Library gave us their sound archives, 250,000 discs, so we digitized all the LPs and the 78s. I love 78s. And then we're now starting with the LPs. And then we got this call from Marion Stokes' son. And it's this woman recorded Philadelphia news programs obsessively for decades. She just was really impassioned about making sure that people can get access to this in the future. She can understand how information can get distorted if you don't have real quotable components, right? As kids in school, and to be able to think critically, you need to be able to quote, compare, and contrast. If you can't quote, then you can't hold on to it. You can't go and put it into a new context. It just flows over, right? And television is just like that. And if it just flows over, then people can just make things up. And you know what? They're just making things up. And so we want to make everything quotable. So she did too. So she recorded all these tapes and she died. And she died with 70,000 tapes. It's a couple shipping containers full of tapes. And they were trying to find a home for it. And we said, well, we'll physically take them and preserve them. And then we'll do fundraising to try to digitize them. We've digitized some of them, but not the bulk of them yet. So we're still looking to do that, and we're trying to build some of the technologies that make it more cost effective to do that many tapes. But the problems with the tapes is there's just not that many tape players anymore, and the ones that are there are wearing out, and they're being bought up by all these archives off of eBay, and so it's actually we've got some issues to deal with, but we're going sort of media type by media type and trying to get really good at it. One that's coming up is microfilm, which was the last time we wanted universal access to all knowledge. It was microfilm. Maybe the last person that likes microfilm. And so how do we go and make that more available? Because a lot of that stuff, that's the only copy left.
What about copyright, though? I mean, has anybody called you and said, well, wait a minute, we're ABC News or we're whatever, and you're going to do what? Or is there an understanding of what you're doing, or has that been an issue at all?
It comes up all the time. All the time. And I'd say it's all a balance. The biggest thing is to try to not trod on other people's business models. And I'm fine with talking with business people. Fine, because it's like they kind of understand, they want their stuff preserved as well. But how do you go and make it so it doesn't muck up their business model? The problem comes up when people start talking in the hypotheticals, when they don't actually see what the real effect is. Because often we libraries are a lot less effective than they'd imagine, right? In terms of going and destroying their business models, right? We don't do that. We don't do that. And so where you can kind of say, well, it's going to be digitized. If it's digitized once, then everybody can have it instantly, and therefore everybody's going to have it instantly, and then it's all going to go away. This was the Jack Valenti thing about Napster and music.
Yes.
And it turns out, no, people are doing just fine selling music streaming on Pandora, and they may not make as much as they did in the heady days in the top of the LP market, but they're making about as much money as they were in about 1965, 1970, inflation adjusted.
Right.
So it may not be the same as the peak, but it's about the same as how it has been for most of the 20th century. So they've adapted, they've figured it out. So every time we come into this sort of new field, there's sort of a learning curve, and we go slowly, and we tell people what we're doing and why we're doing it, and there's conversations. A lot of people don't feel that they can give us permission, right? But they give us latitude to try.
Good.
And it's all around work. We're here, we're listening. We need all of these places. Libraries only have published works in them, pretty much. I mean, everything in a library is copyrighted, pretty much, right? And we buy them and we lend them. So how can we do that function in the digital world? It takes some learning, and frankly, people have been on good behavior, right? But there are bits and pieces. People are sort of worried about this and that, but it's the hypotheticals that aren't really proven out. Those are the, whenever you hear people saying, "Oh, well, it's a slippery slope. If we let this happen at all, then it's all going to." Those are words that end up with bad decision making. I think we need a mechanism of getting this information out there. And let's just take books in a different way, kind of like old newspapers, right? Of how do you go and make it so that you can still refer to old newspapers when really newspapers were made for making the news that day? How do we go and have that kind of thing? And that was where microfilm, when I was growing up, came in. And so how do we go and do the same for books, for television recordings, and the like?
I noticed back in 2015, I'm sure you read this, The Atlantic and Slate at least, suggested that when James Billingham was leaving as Librarian of Congress, they knew who the best person was to become the new Librarian of Congress, and it would have been you. Obviously, I can understand why that probably wasn't anything in your thoughts at all. And honestly, I think Carla Hayden is
She's doing a great job.
a wonderful job considering especially the environment that she's operating under. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this. You've really taken a very kind of open science approach to this in terms of the development of this new web, if we want to call it renewed web. And Vince Cerf, Tim Berners-Lee, you're certainly one of those people that is really, thankfully, standing there. You've got stature to try to keep this going on. As all these things are developing, we've got the Internet Archive, and you're finding ways of connecting, which is wonderful. We've got the DPLA, which again is another wonderful repository. And we have hundreds, probably thousands and tens of thousands of these things. Are we ever going to see something that's going to connect these, at least for searching? Or what do you think is going to happen to the search version of this? Or don't you think that that's really an important issue right now? Or how would you see that?
It's Google. I mean, just really, it's Google. I mean, and if you want more in-depth place to start, it's Wikipedia. And
That's true.
The key thing is to just make it so that it's not the end. I think Wikipedia is great for being a starting place. So let's have that be a place to launch from. It's Google. We have to go and surface our things in whatever Google becomes, or whatever the next thing is. We've got to adapt to the discovery mechanisms of the broad public. Yes, we should weave things into our card catalogs. Great, awesome, all for it. Let's make that a lot better. Calling innovative, calling Circe Dynex. Come on, guys, let's go and weave the digitized books into into our card catalogs. Let's find lots of points of access. But right now, It's Google.
It is.
So, okay, so how do we do this? We have a puzzle, which is you don't want to just find things based on author title. Because that's, imagine that's more or less how you want to find a book. But that's not how you want to find an entry in a book, a few paragraphs of a book. The best information about Abraham Lincoln's speech is not going to be Abraham Lincoln's speech, as a title of a book. It's going to, be some paragraph in the middle of some biography. So how do we go and make it so that these digitized books are surfaced in Google? So how do we go and make it so that the full text is surfaced in Google without making it so that we expose that in such a way that can make it so that the full text can just go everywhere?
Right.
We haven't figured that out. I think Tim O'Reilly, a publisher, said, why don't you just take all the ins, ands, and nots, and thes, and buts, and all the punctuation out, and just shrink it. So you basically make it so it's unreadable by humans, but it's readable by computer.
Sure.
That's kind of clever. So maybe there are ways that we can go and help not violate the balance, that try to keep the publishers all going and healthy and strong, yet allow us to surface materials in new and different ways. So I think the idea that we're going to build a search engine to kill them all, and they're all really just going to come streaming back into the libraries, it just ain't the way it's going to go. It's going to be lots of different ways through. So how do we turn on journalists, writers, teachers in elementary schools and high schools, and how do we make them information aware so that they bring their kids in through new and different ways? I think we've got to become multifaceted in ways. Get out from behind the reference desk. Get online and just start playing and injecting, talking to our kids, and finding out how they're doing. It's a little bit of a shock, and make ourselves relevant.
That's true. But it's wonderful to see so many new materials, so many archives opening up, so many
Not
full-text
enough.
collections. I know, but
come
there are
on.
so
No,
many
no.
of them
There
now.
are so many, but they're small. They're still
They're
doing their
small.
special collections. And they're often doing things in these little bespoke little readers in such a way that it's very hard to weave them together.
Yeah.
So 78. So we've been digitizing these 78. This is before my time. And so we're working with Connecticut College, where they're digitizing a lot of the sheet music. We're trying to weave those together. It's really
very
cool.
good.
That's awesome.
Boy, is that a pain. And so it's really, how do you go and weave these things together to make, we have the information, they're in our libraries, but often these things are these little grants from the Mellon Foundation, thank God for them, but then they end up on some random website and they go dead.
Yeah.
Or they, or they're off in sort of their own little world in some reader that made sense in, 2006. And it's like, what do we do? How do we go and work together? I think that if we feel that we're not going to lose something by seeing our materials move a little bit more often, I think we're in a much better shape. So what does that move mean? It might be that things are referred to, say, by the Digital Public Library of America, or maybe hosted on something like the Internet Archive or Flickr. I guess Flickr is, well, we'll see what happens with Flickr. But there's things that happen. We might want to see these materials sort of come up in more and different ways. Ease up, I guess, would be, and bolden up. That let's go and get these things up and out there and see how it goes. I think we can go and talk ourselves into committee madness of levels of no. Or, gosh, don't we need even more permissions from this? It's like, no. No. Journal literature, right? All of higher ed pretty much is not a monograph-oriented world anymore. It's journal literature. And we libraries have built walls around it. And we built it with our budgets. And we built it by building up Elsevier. We built it by building up JSTOR or HathiTrust, that are only allowed access through their portals to their database in their way by our users and our users alone, and not the general populace that wants to have access to it. This doesn't make any sense. We have enough money out there, we're just not spending it well. And I don't quite understand the right way to think of it. If you are in charge of a university's library, you're only really supposed to serve your own library. I mean, it would be great to serve others, but you're supposed to, and then it makes for these subscription-based services with these sort of bizarre access restriction models. And it doesn't work very well. So we've got to rethink things. We've got to come up with mechanisms for people to try, and let's spread the money differently.
Yeah.
And I feel a great deal of urgency on this front because I can't get access to JSTOR. I mean, this is dumb. Right? I'm a librarian. I work in a library. I can't get access to it. So there's something kind of broken about what we libraries have built with our budgets.
Yeah.
We've built these sometimes nonprofits, sometimes for-profits that serve us, but they serve us in a very constricted way. And it's not serving the general populace. Let's rethink our budgets. Let's bolden up. Let's use first sale, fair use, or just common sense. Try some things out, and I bet we'll find people aren't going to argue against us the way that they'll argue against us if we really pose a business model threat. And let's make sure it really is a business model threat, and then work with them. We've got the budgets, but let's benefit everyone. And if it's locked up in these portal things, it's not going to surface in Google. It's not going to be in Wikipedia. It's not going to be available to people. And we'll have shortchanged a generation that needs us.
It's very true. So getting back to World Book Library, or books, Better World
Better
Books,
World Libraries,
and Better World Libraries, how do you see this? Or what it's a big announcement.
It's a big announcement
It's a big
today.
announcement. But for like, let's say, members of the general public or whatever, obviously you've talked about how if you start using them, if you go to them, try them out maybe before you go to Amazon. But how do you see this folding into, the larger pattern of the book part of it, as well as the philanthropic part of this?
Better World Libraries, nonprofit, now owns all the shares of Better World Books. So they can be a full and up and running B Corp to make sure that they're, but we still have to be cash flow positive, right? Because, foundation money doesn't sprout on trees, right? It's kind of limited. So we have to go keep this organization going and growing. And it'll be based on people offering books to be sold through it and buying books through it. But they're now part of the ecosystem in a more and different way. They've always donated books to Books for Africa and Room to Read. They're just going to up the number of books that they are trying to get, a broader range of books, ones that aren't necessarily profitable for them to get. So if you take the pre-ISBN world, so 1923, 1973, these are really challenging books to go and deal with, because often they don't even have LCCNs, right? So it's not even quite clear what those are. And since those have been out of circulation now for decades, people aren't referring to them. So, but we want all of those online, and we want those referenceable. So we have to go and encourage libraries to go and make those available to Better World Books. We have to have Better World Books be healthy enough to be able to accession those and go and understand what they are, even though they're not profitable. Then those books that have not been digitized or preserved within the Internet Archive, they'll donate those. We'll digitize those and make those available, the one copy, and that will then be preservation and access. And then we want to weave those back in. So, for instance, we're starting to weave those back into the Better World Books website. So they have kind of their own look inside the book. But even another cool thing is you can borrow it. Right? It's like, wow, what kind of bookstore would allow you to then just borrow the book without paying anything? It would take a non-profit bookstore. And that's what a Better World Books fundamentally is by this ownership structure. And it's beneficial mandate. From an end user's perspective, we would like to make it so that it's a better user experience. They can browse. They can see a broader range of books, not just the best sellers. I mean, Better World Books really isn't the Dan Browns of the world. The Better World Books is the long tail. It's the books that came out of libraries. It's the long tail books, and they have all books, but no, it's not what Better World Books is really known for. So can we go and use a used bookstore that has lots and lots of books? I can't. There's that picture of Better World Books. It's really acres of books. I don't know if they do tours, but I sure hope so. If you're ever in Mishawaka, Indiana, and South Bend, Indiana, go. It is incredible. I mean, I don't know, I get a thrill just by seeing that many books and the number of books that are being requested, and you can see the ones that are coming through because there's people picking up, and they're really different books. They really aren't just the beach reading that people want to know. So for end users, we want a broader range of books. For libraries, we want them to have a responsible deaccessioning program. They can feel good about where their books are going after the fact. We'd like to broaden Better World Books to be able to accept not just books, but serials, records, audio books, and the like, even though they may never sell them. But they're sort of a conduit into the preservation system. Buy books from Better World Books. You know, they're going to be announcing a program of discounts as part of this whole system, and we're thinking about giving out, gift cards within the Internet Archive to just get people to think a little differently than Amazon.
Right.
And it is slower. I'm completely addicted to it. I get it tomorrow. It's going to be okay. It may be a week, maybe 4 days, maybe a week to be able to get it from these other places. But sometimes I can actually wait a week, especially if it's a good cause.
Yeah, and it is a good cause.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. All right.
Well, we want to thank you for coming to the conference. Thank you for Better Books Library and for everything that you're doing. It's wonderful to meet a digital librarian that's as high profile as you are and is able to actually get things done more than the average librarian sitting behind a reference desk. You are really challenging us, but you're challenging the world in terms of their perception of what a library is, what a library could be, what the importance of information.
It's our day.
It's amazing.
It's our day, and we are in the right position. We've got the right job titles. We've got budgets to go and make things available. Let's do our jobs better.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.